So welcome to another video from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander. Today we're doing the latest episode of From Cover to Cover, which is a series of videos that I do where we talk about a book, usually a history book or a book about something in history, and then we talk about war games that go along with the topics covered in that book. So that way we can bring two of our favorite hobbies, reading and wargaming, together. So I know that in a lot of wargame rule books or in playbooks that are popping up, you'll often have bibliographies or kind of designer notes where you'll have inspirations from books or things that were heavily used for research for games. And I found myself reading some of those and really I would be inspired on topics that I'm like, I have no idea about this. And you have a nice list of books. And I also found myself reading books and then being like, oh, that was so cool. And then later on, I might play a game on that. I'm like, oh yeah, I read that book. And so being more purposeful in kind of some of the things that I'm doing with regards to reading and wargaming together, it's been a nice kind of culmination of those things. So anyway, that's a bit of background on this. So today we're talking about specifically only Volume 1 of Shelby Foote's Civil War, the Civil War narrative, I think is what they call it, yeah. So this bad boy basically covers 1861, 1862. So this particular volume is called Fort Sumter to Perryville. So you have a bit of preamble and kind of the setup, and you have, Fort Sumter, and then it goes through in descriptive narrative style detail the course of the war through the major different theaters. So before anyone gets mad at me, so Shelby Foote's a good old-fashioned Southerner, and he talks about his ancestors in this book, and I understand everything that people have to say about it. What I was looking for in reading these is, I'll be honest, I don't know if I really cared about the American Civil War. It was just something I didn't have that connection to, being English, and I didn't understand the geography, and then there was so many different names, and each battle had often two names, depending on, who got the naming rights for it, so to speak. And it was, a lot of it feels like it was an internal thing, and sure, there were external factors, but, it's one of those things where we just, I don't know, we don't learn about that in the rest of the world. Spoiler alert. So it was a topic that everyone plays games on, and everyone's like, oh, there's 10 billion Gettysburg games, and I've played a couple of them, honestly. But I never had that same connection like I do to some of the other conflicts out there that we play lots of games on, because I didn't really understand the context. I didn't really understand the overall arc of the war necessarily. Like, the thing that I knew is that the North didn't do a whole lot successfully those first year or two, and there was lots of messing around in the Shenandoah, and then Gettysburg was really that high watermark and that turning point, and after that, things started to go downhill. That's really, and then so we'd play a game, and it was like, cool, where does that fit? I don't know. It was all pretty meaningless to me, and so I wanted to read a book or do something where I could really get the whole story of the war so that I could fit in, hey, when I play this game, that's what this is. So I would look, there was a couple options. I have Battle Cry of Freedom by James McPherson, which I will read at some point, but I wanted to do this one because as much as I like history, I want it to be reasonable, for something that's potentially could be quite dry, I wanted it to be at least somewhat literary, because if the writing style's good, I'm gonna get through it much easier, even if the topic might not be the most interesting. Whereas if you have an uninteresting topic and you have a dry writer, I'm out. Honestly, it's not gonna happen. So I decided to start here, and everyone had all their different caveats and such like that, which was effectively that there's a lot of lost cause stuff in here and a lot of love for the South. I've only read book 1. I will read book 2 and 3, hopefully by the end of this year. And I did kind of a hybrid. I would read some, and I also was listening to an audiobook version of it as well. And as such, this took me about a month and a half to get through. In this, volume 1, make no mistake, is 800 pages. There is a couple of, I'm going to be honest, not great maps and diagrams in here. They're pretty vague, very high level and not particularly helpful. So what I did do, oh no, I put it on the shelf. Did I? No, that's right here. I also picked up the Civil War Battlefield Guide. So this is the 2nd edition hardcover from Francis Kennedy and Patrick Noonan. So this is a very well organized, chronological map book of all the different battles with all the different statistics. If you think about the little kind of blurb you get on the side of a Wikipedia article, it's those all collated, but then with a bit more context and really good maps that are color, and they're very clear about retreats and moves forward and things like that. And so every time there would actually be some kind of a battle or anything like that, even if it had a little lame map in there, or if I was doing the audio part of it, I would reference this, read those few paragraphs and pages. So really, I'm reading like 3 books at once on this. But this pictorial map guide was invaluable. It doesn't have a map for every battle. Some of them are just described with some statistics, but those are usually for the smaller skirmishes or engagements that are important, but maybe not. They're fairly obvious what happened from a narrative standpoint. Whereas something like Shiloh, for example, lots of movement, lots of, where when you're reading the description of that battle in here, it's pretty good. I could follow what was going on. But seeing it on a map to be able to reference, okay, this is where this commander was, this is where this commander was when they were moving and retreating here, this was happening here, even though that was like 10 pages ago and it feels like that's a long time, those were happening concurrently. Antietam was really helpful to see the map for that, and also Pea Ridge was a really good one as well. Just because some of those had a lot of maneuver and movements in them, and so in order to not get lost in a word-based description of it, seeing it pictorially, extremely helpful. Anyway, all of that to say, I've really, really enjoyed this. It's not without fault. It is very verbose. I don't hate it. I like the style. He's a very good writer. You can hear his voice in it. It is, so much of it is anecdotal, which makes it probably pretty bad history. But like it's not academic, is what I would say. It is narrative, and it's. Someone said to me, they said Shelby Foote never met an anecdote he didn't love, and that's absolutely correct. That makes it, again, if you're painting with really broad strokes, it makes it wonderful to read, and it's very funny at times. It's very dark at times. It's very tragic at times, but he can get into like the small little funny minutiae of things. He does pick quotes from like real documents, though. There's like excerpts from letters written home and orders given and things like that. So it's a mixed bag, but for the layman, you could do a lot worse. The layman's not going to read this, right? It's 3,000 plus pages. So I say that, like, if someone was to sit down and read it, it is eminently readable. But I'm also a person where I understand that when he he has an extreme love for all the different Southern generals, and that's very obvious. But you know, understanding that there's biases in writing is just something that everyone has to know going into history. So reading something that's full of biases, I just know that when he's talking about those things, and he talks about like how handsome and radiant they were compared to like the gross, ugly Union generals, like that's meaningless. I understand that. That doesn't take away from what I'm trying to get from this, which is I want to see this of the whole war start to finish so that I can contextualize the particulars of what we do here at the Player's Aid. So anyway, it is serving that purpose very well. It is consuming a lot of my reading time. I don't know if I kind of love that or hate it, but I'm too scared to take a break because I don't want to like stop and then not complete these. I want to read the whole thing because it is very good. Grant warned me that in book 2, when we read a bit about Gettysburg, he's got some pretty hilariously silly things to say. So again, there's a bit of pinch of salt about that, but this is again a jumping off point into other things for me. So anyway, if you've not read these, you could do worse, but understand that everything has its context. So, all that said, I'm having a blast reading this, sorry. And let's talk about a few games that kind of do or don't fit into this. And my first thing I'm going to say is that I have some confessions to make. And those confessions are, when we went to Noble Night in 2023, I sold off basically my entire American Civil War collection. It wasn't huge, but it wasn't insignificant, because it just was, that's not true. I didn't sell all of it. I sold most of it. And let me get one more that we're going to talk about. Sorry, you have to see that. Okay. Because at the time, it just wasn't going to happen. Again, like I said, I just wasn't that interested in it, and it was taking up a lot of space, and we just don't have the space to keep every single game. And we played some of them, and some of them I didn't, and it was like, am I ever going to get to this? And I told myself no. And so I sold a lot of games. And now, now I'm like, no, why did you do that? So I'm not saying that to encourage you to keep all of your games. You should not do that. But I am having, not regrets, but a little bit of regrets. Where I'm like, oh man, I don't know if I've got to go and acquire those again, but if the opportunity arises, there are some that I will be rebuying. The big one, and so we can talk about the games I don't have, we're just going to blast through them. So I don't have, but we did a full review. I sold Antietam from Worthington, which was part of their, I think it's the Civil War Brigade Battle series. The series is really good. It's really, like a solid system that's very playable. And we played it, and I enjoyed it. But again, it was like, I'm never going to get back to this. And now I'm reading the Battle of Antietam, and I'm like, oh, it's the Sunken Road. I remember that. Like the Bloody Lane, as they call it as well. And you're like, oh my gosh, I want to go back and like play that in the context of my knowledge of it. I also sold, I had South Mountain. I think I had 2 South Mountain games. I think I had one from MMP, and I think I had one from GMT as well. So, and I also sold my Death Valley Great Battles of the American Civil War tri-pack. Was it a tri-pack? I'm pretty sure it was. But I did that because Grant has a copy, and I don't need both. So I can always play his one. So yeah, there was a few others. I think I had a Cedar Mountain game. There was a couple others that just like, I probably shouldn't have done that. I didn't know at the time. Because the story is that in about November time, a friend of ours came into town, and he and I played On to Richmond 2, great campaigns of the American Civil War, and I kind of fell in love with that game. And that sparked this of like, okay, let's do some reading, let's play some more games, because it was that system and that particular game that were like, the lights kind of came on. I still have very particulars about what I'm looking for in an ACW game, and it's pretty much at that campaign or that operational level. For tactical stuff, I'm maybe a bit more picky, because there's a million tactical games where it's, here's my line of guys, and those can get very crunchy very quickly, and I don't know if that's what I'm looking for. But anyway, I figured that that kind of itch came to me after I had sold a whole bunch of stuff, so yeah, you live and learn. We all do it. So let's kind of start with that. This is On to Richmond 2. I think this was my favorite game of 2023, my favorite war game. If it wasn't the first, it was the second. Number 1 and 2 slot. I think on the British way was number 1. This was number 2, and it was close. This is a massive game. It's huge. It's got 1 million maps in it. This has the Peninsula campaign in it, yeah, okay. And it has the Richmond campaign, it has the Overland campaign, and it has the Petersburg campaign. In the book that I'm reading, it was only that 1862 Richmond campaign that has Malvern Hill, 7 Days Battle, Yorktown, that kind of stuff. That's all in this box, and you play it at a campaign level, where, like, you know, Yorktown is 1 hex, and Malvern Hill is 1 hex. And so it's a very different way. This is a logistics game. This is a time game. You are, you know, over the course of time, you're doing things. There's huge external factors which attract at the edge of the map and things like that. With, you know, the ironclad CSS Virginia, and then you've got the taking of Norfolk from Fort Monroe and the effects that has on this Richmond campaign. There's a mechanic for the Union generals, specifically McClellan, just being passive. Like, he's just in his mood where he's not doing anything. He's not going to do any attacks. He's just going to strengthen his defenses, and he's going to ask Lincoln for more reinforcements because he thinks he's outnumbered 2-1. That's all in here, and it's incredible. This is not a game system for the faint of heart. However, I love it. With that being said, I bought that at WBC because it came out this year. At WBC, I also bought Stonewall Jackson's Way 2, which is that same system. This was recommended to me as kind of a good entry point because it's much smaller. So, On to Richmond 2 has like 115 turns. This has like 13 turns. So this is much more manageable. You're going to do it in a day. I'm about halfway through a campaign with Mike on Vassal. It's really good. I love it. This would be a good place to start because it has both first and second Battles of Bull Run in it. And it was really good. I think this is more like what it's supposed to be. This is more typical of having those maybe less crazy long campaigns. I think there's 1 or 2 of these GCACW games that are 100+ turns or close to it. And that's cool, it's amazing, but that's also a massive commitment. Whereas a lot of these are anywhere from like 10, 15, 20, at most 30 turns in some of them. These ones are, I think, 13 and 14 or 15 turns respectively. So this is a good place to start there. I also have in here, apropos of nothing, I have these really slick, see-through, fixed counter trays from Cube for Me. They were very gracious, and they sent me a couple. They sent me some for this game and for On to Richmond 2, because these are games with lots of counters. And being able to organize these in these really slimline trays, and for it to all fit in and be really accessible, is a huge boon to playing those. GCACW, that's great. Campaigns of the American Civil War. It's a series from MMP. I will auto-buy every single one that they make. That's how much I like it. I won't even think about it, because if it's bad or I don't like it, I'll sell it on. But buying them on the aftermarket is unconscionably expensive. I'm in the market for Roads to Gettysburg 2, so if you have that and you don't want to charge me $400, $500, $600, let me know. I'd like to not have to mortgage my house to get a copy of that, but I desperately want to play that. Again, part of that is because of what I'm reading. That initial campaign of moving up the valley towards Gettysburg, I think Antietam's in there, and I want to play that whole campaign because there's lots of maneuver in it, and I think that'll be fascinating. So, another game that I've got here is, this is Battle Hymn Volume 1 from Compass Games. So this game contains Gettysburg, which was not in here, that's in this one, but it has Pea Ridge in it. And Pea Ridge, this is a stunning map. The production's great, it looks wonderful, and the rules are really cool. It's a lot of advancing, taking some defensive fire, and retreating. Advancing, taking some defensive fire, and retreating. It's that kind of a game, and you have to do it all, and every time your waves come back and they're demoralized and you're taking attrition losses, you feel that. So tactically speaking, that flow of the game, of trying to get your wave to go that little bit further and then back and a little bit further, right? 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Trying to get it to that instead of 1 step forward, 2 steps back, 1 step forward, 2 steps back. Really, really, really cool. I hope that we get Volume 2 and we get more of these, because this is a system that it's a battle, and even the biggest one in Gettysburg, you can play them. You know, there's different scenarios within it. You can do real small, you can do the whole thing, but they're playable. It's a beautiful product. I really, really like this. This was one of my first ever real kind of Civil War games, and I did really like it, and I still do. So this is a game you should check out if you can get your hands on it. Next up, we have some more confessions. So this is For the People, one of the premier card-driven games, or CDGs, from Mark Herman, put out by GMT Games. This is the third printing from like 2014. They've got another one on there with a deluxe map that's much nicer than this one, which is, you know, old school, a little bit Wilderness War. I haven't played this. That's the confession. Not played it. When I think Grant's got the new one on order with the new maps, we'll probably play that as just because we need to. But this is the whole war in a box. It's a card-driven game, and you're moving your forces with their leaders all around the map on a point-to-point map. It's one that I want to play. A couple other games that I don't have with me are The U.S. Civil War from Mark Simonich, put up by GMT Games. I'm gonna give Grant a nudge to put that onto the Shelf of Shame Dust-Off event for 2025, because I desperately want to play that. He has played it with someone else, but I want to play that with him and play a good chunk of it at least, so that I can experience that, because apparently the game's really, really good. And it does all of that at that really high level. I know he's also got the new, oh gosh, I don't know, I can't remember what it is. So I've got Kernstown here from Revolution Games. I think he got the new one. This is kind of old, it's a couple years old now. He has, gosh, was it Vicksburg? I can't remember if it was Vicksburg or not, but those look really good. It's that blind sword system from Herman Luttman. That system now, he's kind of given Revolution Games the go-ahead to kind of have them make more in that system. Those are really awesome. Another game that was really good was 1862. Is it Brothers in Arms? 1862 from Compass Games. It is a much more close-up tactical game of ACW, and it was really cool. I think they had some battles over in, they had a Santa Fe one, I think it was. Again, I really, honestly, the Arizona campaign, one of the most interesting parts of it, because I didn't know anything about it, and that was so interesting. That was fascinating. I want more of that. That wasn't Santa Fe. I don't remember what it was called, but we played a battle, and I'm pretty sure it was I think it was in Texas, not New Mexico. I don't remember, but either way, that 1862, I'm pretty sure it's called Brothers in Arms. Really, really cool, very different. All your artillery is off map, mostly, and you're doing these, it's, running over open ground, getting into a gully, fighting up a gully, and you're doing that at a much closer scale with much simpler rules than some of these more complicated games that want to get into the nitty-gritty and the minutiae of things, which is one of the big detractors that I have had from ACW games, is that a lot of them are really crunchy for what I was getting out of them, which was very cursory experience of a battle that I didn't understand the context of in a wider war. So that's part of what's driving me to do this, to read these so that these games are more meaningful, so that I can place them in a time. Okay, it's 1863. When in 1863? Why is this battle important? Well, it's here, and at this time this was going on, so this is why this was key. Like, I can read that, but that's meaningless. So, trying to get some ground, a broad brush of knowledge, where I could put some of these games into context. And I think playing those GC-ACW games, which are also at a very high level, you see so much more. Like, there's 5 or 6 named battles just in one campaign, and you're doing the campaign aspect of it, where you have pseudo-political, but very logistical, supply, and kind of attritional concerns. That's the stuff, that were the drivers of a lot of these campaigns and different things and events that happened in the war. And so that really kind of bridged a lot of what was going on for me. So I'm having a good time reading this so far. I don't want to lose steam though, and so I'm nervous that it might happen, because these books only get bigger. The next one is a cool 1,000 pages, and the one after that's close to 11 or 1,200. But I've done all this kind of early preemptive, or like this early war stuff where, there was some successes up and down the Mississippi, there was the failure of the Richmond campaign, the kick in the teeth of the 2 Manassas battles, lots of failures here and there for the Union, and them just trying to get themselves sorted out. We just had the Emancipation Proclamation, and I think book 3 is where things really start to get maybe much more dynamic, where there's all of that stuff up and down the Shenandoah, that charge up to Gettysburg. I'm very curious to see the 1863 stuff. 1864 is like everybody collapses. I don't know, but I'm having a good time with this. The battlefield guide is incredibly helpful. It's indispensable, really. I would be struggling a lot more if I didn't have this, because they're describing a historical action, and so they're covering lots of different things that are happening, and if you forget one of those, or you miss some context, or it's hard to it's easy to lose the focus or the picture of the battle. And so, as opposed to something like, if you're reading a historical fiction book, something like, think about Sharp, right? It's Napoleonics. But in those, because it's a character book, it's about him and him fighting within a battle, you hear in great detail chronologically about what he experienced, with a bit of and there were some explosions over here, and they made an advance over here. And so really the focus is right here, so it's hard to lose at least the important stuff. Whereas in this one, the important stuff is he describes this right wing of the battle, and then he describes this big center wing of the battle. And now 25 pages later, we're describing the left wing of the battle. I think I said left twice then, but I don't remember. And so you're getting all this, and it's hard to concentrate on this and then be like, oh, and also contextually they were doing this at the same time, and this was like a pincer maneuver, or this was being fought back, and they were pivoting. So I think having a pictorial guide is, again, invaluable, it's indispensable. If you're going to embark on an odyssey like this, supplementary reading, very, very helpful. There is a million other American Civil War games out there. There's too many to even like consider and to play. We'll get to as many of them as we can, but the great campaigns of the American Civil War, I'm fully on board for. They got a new great battles of the American Civil War on the horizon. So once that comes, I think I'm much more inclined to play it now. But we really want to do one of the blind swords system games, because we've played games from blind swords or modified. So there's the Black Swan series, which is the Herman Luttman's Gettysburg game from A Most Fearful Sacrifice, I think is what it's called, from Flying Pig Games. And then we also played Herman's At Any Cost, which is 1870 Franco-Prussian War, Battle of Metz. Really, really, really good. But we've played the system. I know that it's good and I like it. We just need to do more within the context of where the original game was designed. I'd also like to check out Line of Battle. Apparently that's really good from MMP from the Gamers. So there's a lot to explore, but as this odyssey continues, you will see more of this on the channel in who knows how long it's going to be before you see another one of these. But it's very... the book itself is very enjoyable, and considering what it is, it's very easy to read. This volume 1, at least, I don't think necessarily suffers from the problems that people were calling out. Like, they very, very, very clearly state up front, he goes into detail about how the basically only inseparable difference, an irreconcilable difference between the North and the South was the policy on slavery. And I don't know. I don't think that he shied away from saying that, especially towards the end as well. I don't know. But we don't have all this yet, which could be lots of, you know, I'm not sure. We'll see. Maybe I'll have a bit more to comment on at that point. But again, once that's done, I've got McPherson to read as well to kind of counterbalance that, because this is very much Lincoln sucks, and apparently this is very much Lincoln was Superman. So I'm sure it's somewhere in the middle. Who knows? But I'm having a good time at the moment. Hopefully, I can keep that up. Basically, if I can transition from book 1 to book 2, and I can get 100 pages into book 2, I'm golden. I'll finish it. But it's always, when you're reading these big ones, it's easy to get fatigue, right? It's easy to just be like, whew, I want to take a break. Let me read something else as a palate cleanser. So I might pick up, you know, a short 150, 200 page book of something else that might be fiction or something totally different. And then it's like, oh, do I really want to go back to that? And you get in your head a little bit. So this one, doing both the hybrid audio and reading helped, because I'm able to kind of keep it, like during my commutes to work, that's 40 minutes there, 40 minutes back. That's, you know, just over an hour, 3 times a week that I'm definitely doing this. And then I'm reading it as well. It just helps to keep it in my mind and fresh and keep this going, because you don't want to stop on these big Odyssey style books, because I find it easy to like lose focus. That's what happened with War and Peace. I was like 2/3 of the way through and was like, I'm done. I didn't read a book for 6 months. No book. I was so exhausted with it. And then I finally got back to it and finished it, and I do not want that to happen to me now. So I'm gonna power through and not take a break. That's my goal. So hopefully that works out for me. But either way, this was a very long ramble. Let me know what you think are your favorite ACW games. I want to hear what your experience is with other great campaigns titles are. I want to hear if you have like good and maybe not so complex tactical games where it's line of battle. We've played Battle Cry, that was fine, but that's Commands and Colors, which it was good, it was not satisfying in the same way that I may have wanted it to be. I really liked that Worthington's, I think it's the Civil War Brigade Battle series, or it's either Brigade or Regimental, but I don't remember. Those were pretty good, and I think I'm gonna watch on that series more. I had a Shiloh one of that and I never played it. But yes, let me know your ACW games, what your experiences are, and what your experiences reading this are. What you liked about it, what you didn't like about it, what am I getting myself into? Who knows? So yes, appreciate you very much for tuning in. I've been Alexander from theplayersaid.com.